Good morning. This is Rick Schisler, your Silver Fox advisor, welcoming you to this week's Weekly Business Hour. We've got a wonderful show lined up for you today. We'll start off, as usual, with some ideas, tips, and some business news I hope you can use even in your businesses today. And then we have a very special expert guest that's going to join us and talk about leadership. Mr. Al Spinks will be joining us after our initial period of discussing some ideas that I picked up this past week. So hang on for that, because I think you'll really be able to take away some great ideas to use in your own business in regards to leadership. First of all, I'd like to talk about something. I just kind of bumped into this, and unfortunately, when I was in business myself in one of the businesses I had, this was the kind of thing that you bumped into, and hopefully you didn't bump into it too hard, if you will. As all of us are probably aware, the weather the past month or so, 2 months, has been kind of rough, particularly in the Midwest and up north, northeast, even as far south as Atlanta. And as you can well imagine, the focus is typically on people driving, getting out of their homes, taking care of themselves, and not as much on the businesses and the impact that a weather event like we've seen that's occurred over and over, and I understand occurring even again today in certain parts of the country where people just really can't get out and they can't do business. And you've got to stop and think, of course, in this part of the country, that's typically not an issue unless we have a storm such as a hurricane or the potential, I guess, for a tornado. But the idea is that you can't do business, and you've got to be prepared for that. Well, the first thing and the most obvious is you've got to have insurance. I'm not sure you can insure against a winter snowstorm, but my point is to make sure, just as a check, that you have the proper amount of insurance. That needs to be something on your core checklist that you look at least once a year with your insurance agent, get expert advice. A lot of people don't pay much attention, particularly businesses in the early years when that expense is thought to be a little too much. But you got to stop and think about it. Am I going to allow a single event, in this case a weather event? And again, I'm not sure you can buy insurance for snow storm, but say a windstorm or a hurricane be more the type of event we would experience in this area. Am I going to let that sink my business, that alone? Even though I've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I have clients who even have flood insurance that live closer in the Houston area and that their businesses are close to waterways, bios, that kind of thing that can flood, and they're in a floodplain area and they buy insurance for flood events, which is a little unusual and abnormal, but definitely they need it because it can wipe their business out. But the thing I really want to talk about is to be ready for those events that you really can't expect. And again, it could be a weather event, but I think the snowstorm is probably a real good example. These storms come every year, but the ferocity of them changes from year to year, and this has been apparently a really bad year, again, for the Midwest, Northeast, and then again, even as far south as Atlanta. They've had events that have shut businesses down. And the only way I know to prepare for these kind of events, or the most important thing, is to be sure you have enough cash reserves. In other words, make sure that if you can't open your business on a day or two or maybe a week, you lose power and you can't open for maybe 2 weeks. There were areas in the Northeast that were without power for 2 or 3 weeks. And you can't open for business, can't operate, you lose the sales, the revenue. You have employees perhaps, they lose the opportunity to work. And let me suggest the loss of a week of sales really has a tremendous impact on a business for an entire year or maybe longer. So the only way to cover yourself during this time and being able to meet your obligations, if you have borrowed money to make your bank note or other type of payment you may owe, is to make sure you have adequate cash reserves. And I think that's something that we think about cash reserves. If you have a bank loan, there may be a requirement that you maintain so much cash, and there's some other cases where it may be required, but a lot of times we lose track of having ready cash available to protect us, our assets that we can turn quickly so we can meet those requirements, keep our business operating, because obviously the opportunity, as soon as the event passes, as soon as the storm, if you will, blows over, then we need to be back in sail fast and furious. And I read an article about the impact of the snow and the kind of things that businesses had to do to come back or try to catch up. Some people believe you never recoup those sales, but immediately a lot of businesses, when they came back and were able to open and people were out moving around, immediately introduced a series of sales and whatnot. Of course, they're discounting, and that's a loss of revenue, but they had to do something to move the merchandise that they had. So it's very, very interesting to be prepared when things pass, to be able to handle the demand when it comes back. And the only way you're going to be able to do that really is to have everything in place and have enough cash to, if you will, weather the storm. Second thing I'd like to talk about, and I picked this up from an article, a friend of mine, Patty Block. Patty's a management consultant, and she writes a blog that's published generally on a weekly basis. And this is an interesting area. It's called The Art of Listening. And many of you may have heard or read an article or a book even about how important it is to listen to other people. But Patty kind of summarized it up in this blog, and I wanted to share it with you. And like I said, you may have read this before, come across it, but it's a good reminder if nothing else. And she pointed out that, active listening, when you listen to someone correctly and you're really listening, your mind's not wandering, you're listening to what they have to say, there are two basic human needs that are fulfilled, and that's acknowledgement and approval on your part back to your listener. And other words, I think, and these were, I thought, the really interesting perspective that Patty had is information and communication. They're used interchangeably, but they're two different things. Information, she says, is giving out. Communication is getting through. And when we listen to people, are we trying to get information or are we trying to communicate? And again, I don't go in for too many academic exercises, but just for a moment, just think about it and how you have to be aware all the time when you're dealing with clients, when you're dealing with your employees, vendors, when you're dealing with your family and friends. Make sure that you want to be sure, that your communication is getting through to people. And if you're giving information, that you're giving out information that these folks or this audience will find beneficial. Again, obviously, in one sense, more important in your business context when you're dealing with your business itself and your clients and vendors and so on and so forth. She offered some guidelines to becoming a good active listener, and I think they're good. First of all, obviously, focus on the speaker. And don't assume anything. I find myself doing that sometimes. Well, when they start a sentence or two, and I say, well, I know what they're going to say. Then I tune it out, and I miss the whole point. Even if they make a different point, I just miss it because I've already kind of got my brain functioning that I already know what they're going to say, so it blocks, if you will, what they're going to say. Acknowledge the speaker and repeat what you've heard. I think this is a wonderful tool. It's something I personally picked up, that when you're in a conversation with somebody, from time to time, stop them and seek some clarification. That way they are aware that their communication is getting through to you, the information is being relayed to you. And allow them to make an addition or change if you didn't understand something or they weren't clear. In other words, I consider this being polite. Because, again, I'm going to make an assumption that you want to listen to them, you want to have that conversation with them, and then at the end, show your approval of the conversation by asking them if they need something from you. Sometimes the approval doesn't necessarily mean you agree with what they're saying, but you respond to them. And many times we just sort of sit there with a blank look on our face, particularly when we're on a phone or some other type of communication device. And that's where active listening comes in as well, so we don't have the face-to-face. Practice this. I think that's interesting. Practice it on your own staff. If you have employees, and communication with employees is just as critical as communicating with your public, with your customers, vendors, and whatnot. But practice this from time to time. It's a small thing, but yet it is one of the most important things I believe that we can do, both personally and in business, is learn how to communicate better. Because that raises our stature, it raises our ability to be thought of as someone who is a leader. And we'll be talking about leadership with Al Spinks in a little bit, but it's just a win-win, and it's something we need to be able to do. And I think there's a certain expectation out there that we do become better listeners and better communicators. The last thing I would like to offer this morning is what I'll call the thought for this week. It was an interesting little article I came across, this past week, and it made me do some thinking because, first of all, it was so obvious. And I thought about it and I said, gosh, it's a no-brainer, but yet it really isn't obvious. And I'm speaking to all of you who are business owners or those of you who are thinking about being business owners. And I want to talk just for a moment about delegating. Now, a lot out there about delegating. And you've probably done your own thinking about delegating, particularly if you're hiring your first employee or you delegate to a bookkeeper or if you have 100 employees or 1,000 employees. And who do you delegate what to, and picking the right individual, communicating with them, all those things. And that's not what I want to touch on, and that was not the sense of what I came across. I mean, it's obviously obvious that we all get bogged down in all this stuff during the day, and we need to lay it off or find someone to delegate it to. But what I'm really talking about is two of the key jobs in every business that's out there. You need to reach a point. If you're the owner, you're the founder, you're the CEO, the head, the leader of the business, you need to reach a point where you delegate two key things of every business. And the first is the actual work that makes money for the business. You've got to reach a point, and I'm not talking about if you're in business for yourself and you just started, you got to run out and find somebody to hand the business off. But over a period of time, a good leader and an owner of a business will find more success if they are able to hand off the actual work that makes the money. Obviously, there's some exclusions to this. I'm one because I'm a consultant and mentor. Al Spinks, who will be our guest, is in the same business I am. We can't hand off the work that makes us money. But if you're in any other basic business where it's not dependent on your ability to stand up or go in and actually do the work, you need to work to find someone that you can hand off some, if not all, of the business that actually makes the money for the business. And the second area is selling of the work that makes the money. You've got to at some point reach that point with your business that you can have people or an individual who can help sell the business. Both of these things pertain to growing the business. So if you're not going to grow your business, doesn't apply. But if you're out there like most people and you're going to try to grow your business, you've got to be prepared to hand these two things off. So give it a thought. I don't know how to work for you, but I think it's a great thing to spend a couple minutes thinking about and see how it applies to your business, not only today, but in the future. I appreciate you listening to my thoughts and ideas for the week. I hope you can use one or more of them. We're going to take a short break now, and then, as promised, we're going to be back with our special guests, and we're going to talk about leadership today. So please stay with us.
Hello, I'm Mark Hader.
And this is Cindy Cochran inviting you to join us on the Cindy and Mark Show each weekday morning from 10 to 11 here on Lone Star Internet Radio.
Super, Cindy, but I believe it's the Mark and Cindy Show.
Huh? Yes, it is, Mark. And it's broadcast live on Lone Star Internet Radio here in beautiful downtown Conroe. Oh, the exciting things we'll talk about, the interesting guests you'll get to meet, the wonderful gifts we'll give away, and the tons of...
Wait. Gifts? There are no gifts. I'm not giving away anything. Why do you get to decide on what we do? It's Mark and Cindy, remember?
Oh, yeah? Well, so ladies and gentlemen, tune in and we'll all find out who gets to decide stuff. Weekday mornings at 10 here on Lone Star Internet Radio. How was that?
It could have been worse. You could have sung your part.
Oh, yeah, wait. It's the Mark and Cindy Show. The Mark and Cindy Show. The Mark and Cindy Show. The Mark and Cindy Show.
Hello, Montgomery County. I'm Rachel Baldwin with Special Olympics Texas, Area 6. Are you a fan of courage? Are you a fan of determination? Are you a fan of acceptance, grace, and skill? Then you're already a fan of Special Olympics. Make it official. Volunteer, coach, and or compete and be a fan of dignity and acceptance. The dedication of our Special Olympic Texas volunteers provides mainstreaming experiences for athletes with intellectual disabilities. You will touch the heart of another person, and it will move you in a meaningful way that lifts the spirit. Please visit the Heart of East Texas Area 6 webpage at www.sotx.org. Also, like us on Facebook to be a fan and be part of Special Olympics Texas.
Income tax time is here. If you earned less than $52,000 in 2013, Montgomery County United Way and Entergy, Texas want you to know how to get your taxes prepared absolutely free. Beginning February 1st, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, known as VITA, will provide professionally trained volunteers to prepare your return in a way that is safe, free, and confidential. And they will help you see if you qualify for the Earned Income Tax Credit. That could mean up to $6,000 in your pocket and in our community. Montgomery County United Way improves lives of all our residents by mobilizing the caring power of our community. We want all our neighbors to have the opportunity to live healthy lifestyles, have access to education, and to improve your financial independence. This tax season, don't pay hundreds of dollars to have your taxes done. Locate a VITA site in Montgomery County by logging on to mcuw.org or find a site near where you live or work by calling 211. And please remember, give, advocate, and volunteer. Together, that is how we improve lives and live united.
Good morning again, and welcome to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schisler, Silver Fox Advisor, your host. And joining me on today's program, our very special guest, one of our expert guests, Mr. Al Spinks. Good morning, Al.
Good morning, Rick. How you doing?
Well, we're doing great here in downtown Conroe. And Al, I deeply appreciate you joining us. Al is for those who don't know it, is a fellow Silver Fox Advisor. And has had a consulting practice for some time, and we're going to get into it here in just a minute. But first, Al, would you bring our guest up to date, so to speak? Give us a little bit of your background in business and how you got where you are today.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Well, good morning, Radio Land. What I'd like to share with you is that I was born and raised in Chicago, the Windy City, and joined the Navy as an enlisted man and was stationed aboard nuclear submarines. I was selected to participate in a leadership program where if I was successful, I would earn a degree as well as an appointment as a commissioned officer. Well, I was successful. I earned a degree at the University of Texas in Austin in aerospace engineering, and took a commission as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. From there, I went to flight school. I volunteered to become a naval aviator and had the opportunity to fly on and off the decks in basically tactical two-seat jets off the decks of 4 aircraft carriers. Subsequent to that, I resigned my commission, went to work for IBM here in Houston, marketing mainframe computers. I was chosen as Rookie of the Year for my marketing abilities. And after 5 years, I decided to strike out on my own and become an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, we were fairly successful. We had tough times, as you know, in business. But on a couple of occasions, we had the opportunity to replace and install all of the desktop workstations in NASA's prestigious Mission Control Center and the Missions Operations Directorate. We were also recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the 500 fastest growing privately owned corporations in America. But as you know, all that glitters isn't gold. I had to go through some rough relationships times, and with that came a divorce and things such as that. But all of that helped me to create a framework that allowed us to understand that even when we deal with these tough times, we don't have to. These tough times don't have to destroy us. So in the meantime, I decided to keep going, to persevere through it. Things get better, and here we are today.
That's an interesting, your background, when you and I visited prior to the show and had lunch together and have gotten to know each other because you're relatively new to the Silver Foxes. I think your preparation, so to speak, of the years of experience and the kind of things that you've done really, really prepares you for a lot of different things. Let me ask you, though, kind of roll back in history for a moment. What interested or caused you to go off, leave the comfort, if you will, and security of IBM and become an entrepreneur?
I thought I had more in me. I felt that I was limited, Rick. I just knew that I could do more. And I hate having limits put on me. Like when I was with IBM, you could only sell to this particular group, but you couldn't sell to the people that may have been just across the street from them because of an organizational or an industrial territory. I was basically had my marketplace was aerospace. But if there was an oil company across the street that I had a personal friend that who would buy my product or services, I couldn't go do that. So I decided it was time for me to do what I had to do.
Sort of kind of take the collar off and run for it, right?
You bet. You bet.
Now, you were in business for yourself for a number of years, and if you don't mind sharing, I mean, because a lot of our audience are what I consider to be entrepreneurs, people who started their own businesses, took that risk just like you did and went out on their own. Everybody is always motivated by different things, and your motivation sounded like it made a lot of sense. But what was the biggest challenge when you were on your own, which you're on your own today, but what was the biggest challenge you faced in business every day?
I'm sorry, Rick. Would you say that again?
Well, I'm sorry.
What was my biggest challenge?
Yeah, the biggest challenge you faced in business when you were an entrepreneur on a daily basis. I mean, you mentioned you had your ups and downs, which is typically the case of any entrepreneur story. But on a day-to-day basis, what was the biggest challenge you faced?
Well, the biggest challenge I faced was having the confidence to know that I could do this. Okay, I mean, you get out there and you start, but you're wondering. You sometimes you're sitting there waiting for the boom to fall, if you will. You walk around with a sense of impending doom. But there became once I got to a certain point, I knew that I had what it took. And I was able to put that behind me and start to think in terms of years of revenue and what I was going to do a year or two from now, as opposed to what I was able to do or being able to only bring in revenue for the next month. So it's a mental picture. It's a mental limitation that we sometimes put on ourselves. So my biggest challenge was overcoming my limiting beliefs, to tell you the truth.
Well, and to some extent, I believe, obviously, again, and I'm repeating myself to some extent, but your training experience in the armed services, your training experience at IBM, and then later as an entrepreneur for a number of years, they prepared you for doing what you're doing today. Is that a correct statement?
That's correct. But, there's a difference in knowing that you could lean back on, in IBM we called it Big Blue, in the military we called them Uncle Sam, and that they had your back. But when you have your own business, the buck stops with you. But the preparation that, IBM taught me business skills. They taught me how to utilize technology to help organizations grow. The military taught me to rely on myself. I could be out in a circumstantial situation, but I have to be present and in the moment to observe what's going on around me in order to take advantage of the best path of action in order to get out of the particular situation I was in. And those were extremely useful in running my own business.
And as you have your business today, of course, being a consultant, a mentor, and with I believe a true focus on the leadership component, all those things came together, didn't they?
Yeah, it's amazing. I took a few years off. Thankfully, I was able to do that. But I took a few years off and wrote a book that helped me to understand the framework that I needed to work within. And the framework caused me to have, it's called 3 R's. And the 3 R's were recognition, recognizing what's going on around you, what is your goals, and what is out there that's going to compete against you making your goals. The second R is to reconcile, which is to make sure that your goals and those things that are competing against your goals we're able to make them all work together. We're able to take what those things that we think may be competing against us and turn them to our benefit. And then the third R is reconnection. We would reconnect that, we would make a plan, and then we'd reconnect that plan back into our circumstance and situation and make life work for us. Life including not just our business, but our spiritual, our personal, and every aspect of life that we deal in.
You know, the book you wrote is an interesting kind of a springboard, if you will, into what you do today and your philosophy of leadership. And ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to do is just we're got a short commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the book that Al has written and talk further about his philosophy in leadership. So please stay with us.
Hi, this is Erica Tullis, Executive Director of the Breast Cancer Charities of America. The Breast Cancer Charities of America is a national nonprofit organization with our headquarters in the Woodlands, Texas. We focus on non-invasive breast cancer research and helping the true patient that is going through breast cancer. Through our Help Now Fund, we help women pay the rent and utilities while going through their breast cancer treatment. It's unlike any other program that truly is out there. We are here to help the woman. Our phone number is 936-231-8460. For more information or to get involved or to even make a donation, please visit our website, www.igopink.org.
It takes something special to make it in the business world. Montgomery County is fortunate to have a diverse pool of industries and businesses. Join me, Cassandra Roshan, Director of Membership Development with the Greater Conroe, Lake Conroe Area Chamber of Commerce for Mind Your Business. I will sit down with our chamber members to talk history, community involvement, and get some tips of the trade on how to be successful in our current business environment. Tune in on the third Tuesday of each month at 11 a.m. to hear from our members of the Greater Conroe, Lake Conroe Area Chamber of Commerce talk about their professional experiences. I guarantee you will walk away with insight of how to mind your business.
Welcome back to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schisler, Silver Fox, your host, and we've been talking with Al Spinks and a book that Al has written. Al, let's pick back up. You wrote the book, The 3 R's, and talk a little bit about that and kind of spring into talking a little more about your philosophy and teaching in the leadership area.
Okay, thank you, Rick. The book is actually called The 3 R's of Spiritual Growth, okay? But I use that book, The 3 R's, as the framework for how I mentor people and coach them on either running their business or gaining more focus and clarity in life. All right. So what we do in the first R is we recognize, again, what our goals are, but we have to recognize, Rick, who we are. We have to recognize there's a spiritual, there's a physical, and there's an intellectual aspect of each human being that at certain times vies for control of our lives and how we do things. And so what I teach is how to basically make those 3 aspects of our lives work together with the emphasis on the spiritual aspect of it by recognizing that there's a part of us that always knows what's best for us and will always guide us towards our ultimate life's goals or towards our goals and ultimate life purpose. If we listen to it, it acts kind of like a GPS, all right? It won't yell at us. It won't, no matter how many times we get lost. If we ask it, it'll tell us what we need to know and what direction we need to go. We might not like it, but we're going to have to go there if we want to get back on path. The second part of our nature is the intellectual nature. Now, this is the tough part because it consists of our conscious, our subconscious mind, our will, our desires, our emotions, and a number of other aspects, including our free will. Now, this is the battleground. This is the part that always always thinks it knows what's best for us, but it's also very important to us because it feeds information into our brains and our bodies. So we have to understand how to reconcile our intellectual nature with our spiritual nature and feed and reconnect back into our world by feeding information to our body. So I teach the people that I work with how to use these things properly and how to make them work together, and to understand that if you can do this part of it, everything else will flow as it should. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Well, it does. And again, I've kind of got a leg up on our listeners in that you and I spent some time and visiting about it, and I've had a chance to look at your website and understand it. I've not read the book yet. I do plan to, though. But the idea being is, and this is what's kind of interesting to me, is you can work with me personally or in my business, but in reality, it would be my assumption, we really have to start with the personal side, and then we see how we can connect that to the business side. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement, and it depends on what you desire for me to work with you on. If it's your business, the first thing we'll take a look to see is, number one, hey, are you profitable? Okay, and we'll identify those areas that can improve your profitability, or areas where you can go and cut your expenses, which on the other hand will improve your profitability. But at the same time, hand in hand with that, I'm going to be working with you to build this three-part nature and to get you to the point where no matter what happens to you, you'll be able to deal with no matter what circumstantial situation comes your way in a manner that keeps you calm, confident, creative, and connected to that GPS that I just spoke about.
Well, the GPS concept, I really like that terminology because the idea that I see so many people when I work with clients I work with, that particularly if they're the owner, and it doesn't matter whether it's just themselves or they have 100 employees. If they're the owner, a lot of times their GPS, their direction, they're a little bit lost because they don't have anybody really to communicate with on the kind of levels that you're talking about.
That's correct. And one of the things that I'd like to share with the listeners is I've had a coach and a mentor for over 20 years. When I was running my business, I recognized that I needed someone to be accountable to, someone that would hold me to task. Yeah, I could tell my wife what's going on, and I'd have the best intentions of the world to meet my goals and expectations. But when I didn't meet them, it was like, well, okay, I'll do it next week or next month. But knowing that, I had another one of the Silver Fox advisors as my mentor prior to joining, Bill Spitz. Knowing that Bill would come over would make me focus on getting done what I had to get done. And the wisdom that he imparted on me was just immeasurable, Rick.
Let me ask you, and you touched on this, but how important do you feel that accountability is to that owner, to be held accountable by someone like that?
If you want to grow your business, if you want to grow personally, you have to be held accountable to someone or to someone else, because our intellectual nature will tell us, hey, it's okay if you don't make this deadline. You've got a lot going on in your life, and so if you miss a deadline, it's all right, when in reality it's not. Okay, I know this is rough, but it's not okay to miss deadlines that you've set there without, an excellent reason. I mean, there's always extenuating circumstances. But if we get into the habit of missing deadlines or doing things in a manner that's not best for everybody involved, then we're not doing our families, our businesses, our communities, and our employees a favor.
Well, we fall into that trap of procrastination. I mean, isn't that ultimately where we go?
Yes, yeah. Listen here. I'm not trying to tell people how to run their lives. I'm not trying to tell people that I have the answer. I just have a way of doing things and a way that seems to work for a lot of the people that I work with.
Well, I've actually been engaged by clients. In fact, I have one right now that you just reminded me I need to drop an email that he has asked me in specific circumstances, not just with doing a job task, but specific day-to-day things to help him change his habits and help hold him accountable because he has no one else. He struggled, and he realizes these changes are necessary to improve his productivity, meet deadlines, and whatnot. So this is a very important level. A very important area, even down to the smallest detail of a business, is being accountable and making those changes and habits that just don't work for you.
Yeah, you're right, Rick. One of the things that I learned is a large business deal is created by a number of small steps. So if we learn in the beginning to do the small steps right and to put our attention into doing those right, when we get the big deals, they're nothing but a bunch of small steps connected together, and we'll be ready for the big deals. A lot of people sit around waiting for the big deals to come, and then they say, okay, then I'll bring my best to the circumstantial situation, where the real truth and reality is you bring your best to the circumstances and situations, no matter how minute they are. And the big deals will be attracted to you, and you'll be ready for them. Because number one, hopefully you'll have someone there that'll hold you accountable. And number two, you will have the right work ethic to complete whatever needs to be done.
Well, I think really I couldn't say it any better than you just said it, because I think accountability, and I felt a tinge in what you said of discipline and developing the habits that you need to build your business, to build yourself, happen in small pieces, as you mentioned, and as we go through this process. Now, if someone came to you as a client, a potential client, how would you start them out in the leadership training that you offer?
Well, the first thing I would determine is, what is it that they want out of the engagement? I had one guy come to me, and he just wanted focus and clarity in his daily life. So I started working with him to determine what are his goals, and not just goals, not to make so much money, but I would have them create value-based goals, and their goals are based on values that are supportive of the community and of other people. Okay, for instance, you can have a value of integrity. You can have a value of being supportive. You can have a value of loyalty. So now, how would you use your personal values to create your goals? So you're basically looking at a kind of a servant leader, if you will. Okay, but this doesn't mean that you can't make money. This is where most people where they break the connection. The key here is, let's look at Stephen Jobs with Apple Computer. Stephen Jobs' values and his goals were to help individuals to become more productive. What most people don't know is when Stephen Jobs started his company, him and Steve Wozniak had $1,500 between them. And it took years and years before it became the Apple with the iPads and the iPhones and the Mac that we know of today. And so you have to, and as his values didn't change, his goals changed. He always wanted to help people become more productive, but now he needed more and more money. And as he stayed focused on his values, the money was drawn to him. Now, did he have tough times? You're right. You betcha. If I remember correctly, his board of directors kicked him out as chairman of Apple, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right? Yeah, that is correct.
Right.
And so he had to come back. He had to overcome obstacles. But you see, when you're doing what you were created to do, the obstacles don't matter. because you're staying focused on that GPS that says, okay, Steve, you got to do this now. You get back on track. You got to do this now, and you go through this little valley, or go through this hill, or go through this bad weather, but I'm going to guide you to where you need to be. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, you did, you touched on something that's near and dear to me. I think some of these stories, and I think the example of Apple is an excellent one. And a lot of times in smaller business, we say, well, I'm not going to be an Apple computer or Apple, excuse me. And so, that's not really relevant to me, but it is relevant to you, because for the very reasons that you just pointed out. I mean, he and his partner, he being Steve Jobs, they started a business with $1,500 in their pocket, and they worked a lot of years. And he went through a tremendous upheaval by being, as you said, kicked out of what he considered to be his own company. He was still a very large shareholder, but he kept moving, and as you call it, he adjusted his GPS, but he never lost sight of his goals. And I suspect that his values, his work ethic, his discipline, all those things that you talk about stayed the same. I mean, he didn't quit, and he knew what he wanted to do, but he didn't bide his time in a sense of just waiting. He kept moving forward. And yes, he developed a company that a lot of folks consider unsuccessful, Next Computer or whatever, but you still can't argue with the fact that the man stayed true to the course and adjusted and kept moving. And I think that applies if I'm a solo on my own, or if I've got 5 employees. We all have to make those adjustments. It's just the magnitude or the number of zeros on the check, if you will. It's all the same basic principles, and the same things are happening to all of us. Would you agree with that?
You bet, Rick. One thing that I've learned is if you create the system, if you create the way to do business, that's what people would call scalable, i.e., it doesn't matter if you do one, or if it doesn't matter if you do 1 million transactions. You've got the tool that can grow to it, and you'll do it the same way every time. The only thing holding you back now is your imagination, and is your ability to change that 10. Instead of you got 10, now you're doing 100, next you're doing 1,000. And there's ways to do that. But we just have to stay focused, and we have to keep coming back to what I call the present moment, okay? Because this is where we get connected to our GPS. This is, a lot of times we'll let other people tell us what it is they think we need to be doing with our lives, or the direction that we need to be taking. And we'll take off like crazy running in that direction, only to get out there and find out, oops, I'm out here by myself, and this isn't where I need to be. But if you get back to this, what I call the present moment, get connected to your GPS, listen. I think you were talking about that earlier in the show. Listen before you start any plan of action, then you'll be much more susceptible to being successful in whatever it is you do.
Well, and I think that's well said. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, Al's going to continue his discussion about leadership and success, but we're going to talk about another part of it that's near and dear to Al's heart. So stick with us, please, and we'll be back with you in just a couple minutes.
Conroe Live is a nonprofit entity whose purpose is for the enhancement of the arts, entertainment, and historical values in historic downtown Conroe. Recent programs include centennial celebrations for several buildings reconstructed after the Great Fire of 1911, the upcoming Historicade celebrating the history of downtown area, an art bench program consisting of 13 art benches depicting history, Chalk Up Conroe, a program benefiting cancer programs using sidewalk chalk, a tree planting program along the railroad tracks along the historical areas in the downtown, and generation of approximately $250,000 for the Owen Theater for improvements. Future projects include downtown historical markers, a pedestrian mall on Simonton Street, walking history programs, and more. For information, visit their website at www.conroeliveinc.org.
Hi, I'm Joyce with the Corner Pub. in downtown Conroe. We're located at the corner of Simonton and North Main, just across the street from the courthouse. The week starts off Monday with open mic hosted by Alan, and Tuesday nights open mic hosted by Jeremy Bankhead. And on Thursday evening, McFarland Jams. There's nightly drink specials available every night, all night. And don't forget, live entertainment every weekend. To see a full list of events, visit our website at thecornerpubinconroe.com. So come join us at the Corner Pub, where the deli is open late.
Hello, I'm Bonita DeRosa, Animal Control Officer for the City of Willis. We invite you to tune in to Lone Star Internet Radio every first and third Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. for the Willis Hour. On the first Thursday of the month, the Willis Hour will be covering upcoming events and news about the city. Join in the conversation with your city officials and other leaders in the community. On the third, we will be doing a recap of the last City Council meeting. The mission of the City of Willis is to provide high-quality services, accountability, and professional commitment to our citizens. We pledge to provide those who live, work, and visit our city an effective government that is open and responsive to the needs and values of the community. Again, we invite you to tune in on Lone Star Internet Radio every first and third Thursday of the month at 11 for the Willis Hour.
Welcome back to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schisler, your Silver Fox advisor. We've been having a wonderful conversation this morning with Mr. Al Spinks, who is also a Silver Fox advisor, and really I consider an expert in the area of leadership, and we've been talking about that. And now we're going to take a little bit of a turn, still talking about leadership, though, I feel, and really directly connected. Al, I'd like to you, because I know this is near and dear to your heart, to share with us some of your ideas about how important the physical well-being and the health of an individual is to success.
Wow, Rick, that's a big question. What I found out is that, I'm getting feedback, but what I found out is that if we can't be there fully for our families, our employees, our communities, as well as ourselves, then we're not doing much good. So it's very important that we take care of ourselves and that we learn what it is and the tools that we have available to us to overcome sicknesses and illness. One of the things I teach the people I work with is I keep saying to stay in the present moment. I do that and so that they can understand what their feelings are, because certain circumstances and situations will bring up certain feelings that we feel internally in our bodies. People may not believe it, but the mind and the body are inextricably interwoven when it comes to our health. All I have to do is remind you of a circumstance or situation that occurred back in the past or something that might occur in the future, and all of a sudden we'll get this tightness or this sick feeling in our abdomen and our solar plexus. And just that fact in and of itself is what leads to a lot of illness and disease, as well as physical and emotional distress. So what I teach people to do is how to work with that. And I use a tool. I use a couple of tools. First, we talk about things, and I ask them I had one client of mine, for instance, that was real smart, that is real smart. But when they got to an area in marketing, they did not perform. They had great ideas, and after 2 or 3 weeks of telling them, okay, this is what you need to do to proceed, they did not move forward. So I asked them, I said, okay, what is it that's holding you back? And it was a young lady, and she says, well, this idea reminds me of giving birth. Okay, well, that makes sense, birthing a new idea. Great. Well, what's holding you back? Well, I lost a child in the womb. oh, so this is why you're not moving forward. She had an emotional block. So I worked with her and we removed that emotional block. So that now what she finally decided to do was for the child she lost in the womb, she planted a tree. And she said, okay, this is how I'm going to overcome this. And she just moved ahead tremendously on her ideas. So I help people to understand what is it that's holding you back. And if we can identify it and we can work with it and we can eliminate its emotional effects on us or on them, or we can help eliminate the emotional effects.
Well, that's an interesting example, a pretty heart-rending example you gave with the lady and the loss of the child. But I think there are many other examples, particularly in day-to-day operations and things where people don't move ahead or don't take care of business or even procrastinate, which there's thousands of things have been written about that. How about the physical well-being as far as your health and your physical ability, that you eat properly or whatever, have some exercise? How do those things impact your ability to be a good leader?
Well, again, it goes back, our body is a complex mechanism, okay? It's an organ, it's a very complex, finite organism. Okay, and it was created from the things of the earth. So therefore, it's resolved to the earth. And the point I'm making is it requires proper exercise, nutrition, and rest. I used to think it was okay to get by on 4 and 5 hours a night for sleep. Then one day I read something, and so I said, okay, I'm gonna make myself stay in bed an extra couple of hours. Rick, you have no idea of how much this improved my overall outlook. I used to walk around being tired all the time. I used to think it was, well, I'm out of shape, but I wasn't getting enough rest. And once you get the rest, you just can't feed your body Cheetos, okay? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and expect to get optimum performance. So you have to find out what works for you. You see, there's not one diet that fits all. There's something out there that will work for every body type. But the key is we all have a different DNA. So what works for me and my DNA won't probably work for you and yours. But if you trust that GPS inside of you and stay with it long enough, it'll direct you toward what works for you. Okay, and the following and the third part is the exercise. Because it is an organism, it needs to be worked out. It needs to be worked out on a regular basis. Now, I don't mean getting out there running, but whatever gives you that ability to continue to want to keep on keeping on. It could be gardening, it could be walking, it could be stationary cycling. It can be anything to get you outside and out of your ordinary humdrum that exercises your body. So it's all important for leadership and your potential to have an effect on your family and your surroundings.
Well, one of the things you just touched on in the exercise area, I think too often we're swept up, kind of like with diets, with the latest and greatest fad. And I think the most important advice that I try to give people is just get up and get out. Walking happens to be a favorite of mine. I have a little trouble right now with an ankle, which makes walking long distances. But, I mean, the simplest exercise in the world, you just need a pair of shoes, and dress however accordingly, and just go out and walk. We don't have to belong to a gym. Of course, that works for some people. It's an important social thing among others. But the idea is we just get out and we move around. And I think as a leader, when I have people working with me, either clients or people working underneath me as employees, it's important I convey a sense of the same thing to them as well. I think that's part of leadership. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. A leader lifts up the people around them to be able to perform the task or a task that they're suited for when the time comes. A leader helps and encourages the people under them not to follow, but to come along with, so that they can trust them when it's no time to get consensus for an important decision. They trust that the leaders made the right decision because of the way that he works with the group of people that are reporting to him or her.
Well, Al, I want to thank you. I mean, this has been a wonderful morning. I know our listeners have picked up, hopefully, some tips. I hope they want to learn more. And if they want to get in contact with you to ask some questions or perhaps engage you, tell us the best way they can do that.
Well, there's any number of ways they feel led to do. You can contact me by cell phone. My number is 281-704-1724. Or you can contact me via my website, which is www.A as in Alpha, S as in Sam, A as in Alpha, presents. That's presents.com. So it's www.asapresents.com. Or you can email me, Al, at asapresents.com.
Let me ask you, could you give that phone number one more time for those who might not have gotten it down?
Sure. My phone number is 281-704-1724. And I'm in the north side of town. I'm just off Intercontinental, so I'm not very far from Conroe and in the area up there.
Well, absolutely. You're near Montgomery County. I, again, thank you very much for your lessons on leadership. I would encourage people to look at your website. Perhaps I haven't read the book yet, but I plan to. I think it sort of breaks things down into simple pieces on your website, even in understanding leadership, which, again, is important. It's a core value, a core part of being a business owner is to be a leader, not only in your business, but in your community and all throughout your life. So I want to remind our listeners of a couple of things. First of all, remember they're archives. This show today and all the shows we've done in the past year are archived and available at the website. So just go to www.irlonestar.com and you can hear a complete show or listen to a portion of it at your leisure at any time you want. And the other thing I want to remind everyone is we still have our Bible collection going on for the folks at Tamagua. Tamagua is a wonderful clinic that's available to people in need, and they're collecting used Bibles to distribute among people who would like to have them. Next week, we have a wonderful guest, a little bit unusual show. We have Brian. Brian is a local artist whose work is shown at the Art Guild here downtown. And he's going to talk to us about how artists are in business. I mean, obviously they're creative, but they also have a business to run. So I would encourage you to check out the Lone Star website at www.irlonestar.com again for more information. And always remember that Lone Star Internet Radio is Conroe and Montgomery County's community radio station where the community comes to connect. Lone Star serving Montgomery County from the heart of Conroe. Now I encourage you, sit back and enjoy the true country music and the rest of the programming that is brought to you by Lone Star. See you next week, partner.
Hey everyone, this is Tina, your host from Retro Saturdays. I wanted to invite you to visit the Lone Star Studios here in downtown Conroe, Texas. We're all volunteers here, and we need your help in serving the Montgomery County area. Radio media is a fun field to be in. Lone Star Internet Radio serves Montgomery County with news, current events, local programming, and of course, music. If you are interested in volunteering and sharing your talents in media, go to irlonestar.com and let us hear from you. Lone Star Internet Radio, serving Montgomery County from the heart of downtown Conroe.